Hey y'all, Chantel here. Welcome back to season two. As you can see, I have a prominent guest with me today, Darwin Hamilton. He is a fifth generation Austinite, a dynamic blend of storyteller, policy advocate, and community leader whose journey from incarceration to leadership is reshaping how Austin and beyond approaches reentry and justice reform. He is an author and served in state government for over 20 years as an accountant. Welcome, Darwin, and thank you for being here.
It is my pleasure to be here.
Yes. So tell me, Darwin, about how you came to be in all of those things that I mentioned.
Certainly. So my journey started at, let's say, late teens, 16 to 19. It's kind of where my life of crime began, which would land me incarcerated at the age of 19 in 1992. Right after graduating, I would receive a 22 and a half year sentence and spend about 5.5 years incarcerated, followed by the next 17 years on parole. So I wasn't necessarily involved in criminal justice organizing or advocacy and activism until around, I would say, 2010, 2012. There was an organization being founded called the Ex-Offenders Council. And I heard a gentleman named Jorge Renault on the radio on KZIFM 88.7 talking about the XOC. And so I heard his deep voice, and I'm like, I got to go meet this man. And so I started going to those meetings, and then that's where we kind of began forming this little bond of formerly incarcerated people that would lead us into becoming the Reentry Advocacy Project as we became more aware of person-centered language rather than dehumanizing language. And also in that year of 2016 is when we will begin a coalition around fair chance hiring with the city of Austin.
Nice.
So that's how it all began.
Nice. Let me pause you there, and let's go back to you being incarcerated, being sentenced for 22 years.
Yes.
Me knowing some of your story, you talk about a certain time in the trial
Yes. Yes.
where the prosecutor states,
Yes. Yes. So me being the kind of person that I am, I have always been a fighter. So I believe that my rights were being violated. And one of the things the prosecutor said during the punishment phase of my trial, he said was, do you see how articulate he is? This is what makes him dangerous, and I want you to consider giving him 45 years. So the jury would come back and give me half of that, which would be 22 and a half years. And what I often like to share is a statement like that is saying basically, had I been ignorant and black, then I would have been harmless. That's the subtext, because he was, criminalizing me and demonizing me by my race and my intelligence.
right? So when did, because we're talking about reentry and leadership and activism, when during the incarceration did you realize that you knew that you were going to do something different, that you were going to help others?
Yeah, I would say probably at the age of 22, 23, I became a leader amongst men while I was incarcerated. And some of the things I would tell them, I said, I see you lifting all of these weights, building your muscles. Are you going to be a boxer, a wrestler, or a fighter when you get out? So you need to start lifting some books, you know what I'm saying, educating yourself. And hearing about the things that were going on in Austin with the Black Citizens Task Force and Dorothy Turner, I was like, something's burning inside of me, but got out, hit the ground running, started my career in state government. And so I wasn't really moved to necessarily do anything, but like I said before, when I heard about the XOC on KZI, I was like, now is the time. And also in 2010, Michelle Alexander wrote her book, The New Jim Crow. And I began hearing her talk about things that I had always known and expressed amongst myself. And so it was kind of refreshing to hear this coming to the mainstream, and how could I get involved? So she ended up coming here to Austin. The NAACP brought her here to Wesley United Methodist Church, and that was my family's church. And so I went to hear that lecture. And one of the things she said in closing her call to action, she said, "You are going to lead this movement to end mass incarceration." And I felt like she was talking directly to me.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the impetus of where it all began. And I'll say that my partner, Lauren Johnson, happened to be in there, but we were 6 degrees separated because we didn't even know each other at the time. But coming to know her later, she said, "I was there." So, you know, the rest is kind of history when it comes to what we've been doing this past decade, a little over a decade.
Wow. So when you said that you needed to pick up books, do you think that that moment sparked you to want to write a book, or was that later?
That was later. And
Okay.
again, I'll go back to Lauren, my accountability partner. But she isn't the one that inspired me to write the book. It was Trina, T.T. Ledette,
Okay.
had a book
Okay.
called The Pink Elephant in the
Yes.
Ghetto, right?
Right.
And Lauren and I, we went to see her stage play. And I think it was at LBJ or
I think it was at LBJ.
yeah, so we went to see that. And then she had a writing challenge because she was self-published and she was publishing authors. So the challenge was, and so I wrote something and submitted it. And then I was kind of just bit by the bug, like, this ain't enough. Like I got more to tell. So that was around 2018 at the time. And so that also is the genesis of the title, because in 2018 had been 25 years since I was arrested. And my trial, because initially I was going to call the book 22 and a half years later based on the sentence. But by
Okay,
the
so
time,
let's say the title.
the title is 25 Years Later, A Sentence from Crime to Redemption, Advocacy, and Leadership.
Right. And so they're going to put it on the screen for the folks to see. And what made you decide to name it that?
Coming back to some of the things that I had been through, because it takes a lot of patience, resilience to be a young person spending 5.5 years incarcerated, also spending 17 years on parole. But 25 years later, like I said at the time, was when I had completed writing it and publishing it, because I self-published. And so I'm like, yeah, that sounds good, 25 years later.
What were some of those challenges that you had once you returned home?
Well, for me, it wasn't the normal challenges that people face because I had a home to come home to. I talk about in the book how I worked in a private prison. I saved my money while I was there incarcerated, so I left prison with almost $5,000. The challenges were, I would say, interpersonally. Of course, when you're gone that long, you are institutionalized. So I had these fears of, walking across Airport Boulevard and MLK. Even though these things were familiar to me, it was that. Then it was also the shame and the guilt and the stigma, because I began working in state government. And here I'm in this public office space, which is a law enforcement agency under the Attorney General. And I was afraid of being exposed because I had entered through a staffing agency, right? So the fear of not wanting people to know. So one of the stories I like to tell is when I was there, I'm 25 years old, I'm fresh out, and women on the job would ask me out to lunch. And I would decline because I didn't want to get those small talk questions. Well, where have you been? Did you just get out of college? Where did you come from? And, I'm either going to have to lie, so I would just, decline and avoid. It was a lot of that avoidance for me.
Right.
Yeah.
So, you speak about systemic change, right? What do you wish people understood about reentry?
That everybody's journey is different. Like we always say, there are a hierarchy of needs. Of course, people need jobs, people need housing, but people need, like now we know what we call peer support. People need, some connection to other people just like them, because it's isolating. And that shame and stigma is a very lonely place when you can't connect with other formerly incarcerated people or people who've experienced what you've experienced. Because even at home, your own family life, the people you're returning to have expectations of you, and you have expectations of them, and there's a disconnect, right? Because the relationship has been strained all of those years that you've been away and the whole family reunification doesn't just happen overnight. That rebonding doesn't just happen overnight.
True. When I was getting ready for the interview, I was researching you, and it says that your personal mission is to change criminal justice policies and practices and reduce the stigma carried by formerly incarcerated people by changing the attitudes of community members and those who work within the system. How do you think we can do that to change the attitudes of those individuals, the community members?
Well, it starts with the second chances, so to speak. Because for me, there was no such thing as reentry and advocacy and activism when I got out of prison in '98. These coalitions, I will say have been built in the past 10, 15, 20 years, because I've been out of prison about 28 years, right? But one thing I know, and I often say, is when you build relationships and a rapport with people, and especially on how you comport yourself, then people develop a level of respect for you based on the way you conduct yourself. And I learned that these same people will then advocate for you, because I had a manager working for the state government as a temp, and she offered me a job, and she said, "Is there anything that I should know?" And then here comes that shame and that slipping. And I told her, I said, "Yeah, 7 years ago I was convicted of a crime." And she said, "Was that it?" And so this weight was lifted, that I was no longer ostracized.
Humanize you.
Yes. And so we need more people like that. But the only way that happens is when you come out of that shame and stigma and you tell your story.
Right.
And people know you. And so they were like, "Well, you're not like them." And I'm not necessarily talking about respectability politics or being the non-threatening black person. But what I'm saying is you have to build relationships with people.
Yeah.
You have to tell people who you are.
Right.
You also have to show people who you are. And that breaks down all the barriers, I believe, in the world.
Yeah. And when you tell who you are, it's so freeing and it's so healing.
Yes.
And
that came from
so
writing
powerful.
the book.
Yeah.
Yes.
Speak on it.
Yeah, writing the book was very cathartic for me, because it allowed me to release all of these things that I had kept inside, all of these different stories. So as you read the book, the chapters are based on different things that happened. So like one of them is the game, for instance, something like how I got into a life of crime, the things that I was doing. And one of the chapters is called The Raid, what that day was like of being raided by APD, Drug Task Force. And then I go through the trial. I've got a chapter called Parole and Freedom, and I'm talking about those experiences. And so that was very, very liberating to get that off my chest. And what's surprising is most of the support that came from the book didn't necessarily come from the community that I had written it for, right? Which is the folks here in the 02, 21, 23, my classmates, friends, and people that know me.
For sure.
But yeah, just telling people who you are, and then they want to get on board, you know what I mean? They want to do what you're doing or help you and support you in some way is what I've experienced along the way.
You said, Lord have mercy, I'm so glad we authentic around here because I lost my train of thought. But you stated Parole and Freedom, the title. How was that feeling once you got off parole? Because you say you were 17 and a half years.
Yeah. Well, for me, I remember riding the Greyhound bus station, man, and I just had all of these, anxious gut feelings and, fear, anxiety, like, what am I going to do? But I had my mind made up that I was going to be successful. And I was fortunate enough, when I tell people my reentry program was my mother, because, she loved me, wanted me to come home to, and live with her. So I did. But there was always in the back of my mind, I'm not going to get off parole until 2015. And I'll be 42 years old. and all of my dreams and aspirations of things that I wanted to be and accomplish will be put on hold until I'm 42. Little did I know, once I started my career in state government, that that would be the peace, the consistency that I would need. And that was also one of the things that I even said in my second panel interview with all of the executives of that state agency. The executive director asked me, he said, well, why do you want to work for the state agency? And I said, because I need some stability in my life. I can't work a temp job for the rest of my life. And he also said, well, you know what? I can respect and appreciate your candor, and that's what we're looking for, and welcome aboard.
Right.
And so it's these moments, in my journey and challenges of navigating, I will say these challenges as well as these opportunities, because it was still up to me to make all of this possible. Like someone can give you something, but if you drop the ball or you don't score the touchdown, then you fumbled, you failed, right? So it was still up to me to continue to prove myself and improve myself and keep growing, keep learning, keep striving.
That's dope. So it's so many things about you, so many, facets. I want to dive into, the historic Dedrick Hamilton house.
Yes.
It was built in the 1870s by your second great-grandfather, Thomas Dedrick, a former slave and freedman. And today it's the site of the African American Cultural Heritage Facility. And you talk about this in your book. What was that fight like?
That fight came around 2002, 2003, is when the city had received a federal HUD block grant for $15 million to revitalize the 11th and 12th Street corridor. So anyone that grew up in Austin knows that 11th and 12th Street were the main thoroughfares coming through East Austin that were vibrant with nightlife, clubs, historic Victory Grill, restaurants, barbershops, all of the businesses. This was our downtown on the east side.
Yeah.
This was like our 6th Street, which we actually used to have a Freedom District on 6th Street. So comparable to, let's say, Beale Street, Memphis, 125th Street, New York, this is what 11th and 12th Street was. But through the decades, of course, there are pockets of crime. And so 11th Street was known for pimping, prostitution, drugs. 12th Street was known more so for drugs, but they were both pretty much parallel to each other in the way they were aligned.
Right.
So with the decadence that's happened, it was the idea that we need money to revitalize. But as we know, urban renewal is code for black removal. So the city would approach us in 2003 and come and appraise our property, lowballed us. Me being the fighter that I am, I refused, so I began to get letters from the city threatening to file eminent domain. Eminent domain is basically a condemnation lawsuit where the city sues you to condemn your property for a public use project. Well, a public use project can be a library, a school, cultural center, an easement for a road, a highway. These are the ways that the municipalities justify taking property.
Right.
But you still are entitled to fair market value. But of course, through nefarious means, nobody wants to pay fair market value. The city wants to get the property as cheap as they can.
Right.
So I went to the Faulkner Library, began studying, researching what are the different appraisal approaches. What does the process look like in the condemnation hearing? So I would read letters from Barron and Adler Associates, which Michael Barron was former Mayor Steve Adler's partner.
Okay.
And I would email them, and then Michael Barron would send me documents on how to file my appeal and stuff.
Nice.
From the hearing. So I used that and fought the city at the time over the valuation of our property. It ended up winning the largest settlement on the block at that time.
Nice.
And then because I lived adjacent to it, my grandmother's house, which is the historic Dedrick Hamilton house, well, I grew up in a house right next door that my father bought and remodeled in the 70s. So they demolished and tore that down, and the Darwin Hamilton House still stands because it qualified as a historic landmark. But I also believe that it probably wouldn't exist today had I not fought the city
Right.
and have them on record that they're taking it because it's historic. But the irony of that is you're going to sue the living heirs of property and then turn around and honor them.
That's so
And I
wild.
currently have no rights to the historic Darwin Hamilton House that
Yeah.
bears my name. So that's the story. It's been 20 years since, you know, that all occurred around 2003 to 2005 is when I was fighting that battle with the city.
So
over
much
value.
so much has happened to you in 20 and 25
Yeah.
years. That,
Yes, yes. So I've been fighting on all fronts,
yeah.
whether it's criminal justice, city policy, eminent domain. I'm pretty well rounded when it comes to these battles.
Which brings me to this shirt. So if you all know that I wear a shirt most times when I do a podcast, and so I chose this shirt specifically because it has a great meaning to in regards to Darwin. So this is the Coalition to Abolish Slavery in Texas, and Darwin was the featured artist on a mural that is located at 1500 East 4th Street. If you could put that picture up, that would be amazing so the folks could see. And so Coalition to Abolish Slavery in Texas is also known as CAS. It's a community-led body of individuals who seek the absolute abolition of slavery in this country, starting in Texas. They are part of the Abolish Slavery National Network, committed to the abolition of slavery through constitutional amendment at both state and federal levels. And you can follow them on IG at Abolish Slavery Texas. So, being that you were that featured artist on this mural, how did you feel when they first approached you about that? And so it'll be a two-part question, and then when you saw the mural.
Yeah. So a friend of mine, Trent Spears, who is Nelda Wells Spears' son, he and I went to high school together. He sent me a DM on Facebook. He said, man, there's this organization, and it'd be dope to have you on a mural. Little did I know at the time he was talking about cast, and
Yeah.
he said, well, I'm going to connect you with the artist. And so the artist, Nees, reached out and told me, and then she, was vetting me and doing her due diligence and asking people, did they know me? And of course, she was working with cast, right?
Right.
And so they said, oh, yeah, of course. So anyway, she was also doing her research. And so me being kind of the local historian that I am, we began mocking up what the mural would look like. And I started telling her the stories around some of the things that are featured on the mural. And, because she was trying to validate her research. And so I helped her with that. She sent me several examples, a few of them that I didn't like. And what you see is what we landed with. So initially, it was going to have the skyline. My face was going to be kind of chopped up in the skyline of the mural. And then there was this evolution, of mankind into apes. And I'm like, no, that's problematic for African American people. That's problematic,
Very
period,
much,
right?
yeah.
And I said, there are better ways that you can express this. And so slavery never ended, it evolved.
Yeah.
Is the theme, but also behind the skyline of the city, because Austin presents itself in a certain way. And who can better tell the story than Austin's native son, being a fifth generation Austinite,
Facts.
and all of these different spaces that are beyond the shadows of this skyline.
Right. I thought it was really dope. They did put it on. A shout out to David and Savannah, who are the coalition leaders, and choosing you as that featured artist. And you talked about how, you wrote that book for this zip code, and there you are, biggest day, '02,
Yeah.
representing the city. So
Yeah.
kudos.
Yeah, and it's one of those things when you think about your ancestors, you become your ancestors' wildest dreams.
Man.
Things that they never could have imagined necessarily for themselves.
Yeah.
And here I am today, right?
Facts. Yeah, I was just saying that to myself. Like, it kind of like helps me to to keep going, or when I'm just
Yes.
feeling down, like I'm my ancestors' wildest dream. They wish they probably could do
Yes.
half of the things, a third of
Yes.
the things that I'm doing.
Yes.
So, are there any initiatives that you are working on now that you want people to be aware of?
Yeah, I'm currently like people don't necessarily see me out front in the streets a lot anymore. I retired, but I'm not doing anything. I'm not
Yeah,
sleeping every day.
right.
So I'm currently involved with the National Association of Public Defenders, and so I'm big on public defense as being the front end or the front line of getting people their basic rights to due process, so things don't happen to most people that happen to me. Also, I'm on the local oversight board of the Travis County Public Defender's Office. And I also do work with a program called PHILIT, which stands for the Philosophy and Literature Circle, which is a creative writing program based in San Antonio with Trinity University and UTSA. So we have units that we visit, the Dominguez State Jail and the Torres unit, where we have a cohort of incarcerated scholars.
Cool.
And it's a dual learning between the undergrad students at both of those college campuses, as well as the incarcerated scholars at the Dominguez State Jail in Torres.
Nice.
So they're learning with each other in the peer model, in the circle model, because we believe that we all can learn from each other.
Fact.
There is no expert. You can learn from your experiences, you can learn from mine, and that's the way we facilitate the learning environment. Of course, we have structured readings, like some of the classics, whether they're Shakespeare plays, some contemporary readings, even like excerpts of my book and other authors, and then, different writing prompts. And so what we found is the feedback is pretty similar between the students on the campuses as well as the students in the jails.
That's really good. I thought you were going to say, I thought that was going to lead to, a lot of people are wondering when your second book is going to come out. So I'm like, oh, he's sharpening his skills. But that's really
Well,
dope that,
yeah,
that's happening.
yeah,
The Philly, you call it Philly, right?
yeah,
Okay.
Philosophy and Literature Circle. Yeah, people have been asking when's the next book because there's so many different things I can talk about. Um, but writing is very daunting. And I'll be honest and say that I'm a procrastinator, so I need a accountability department to check in and say, hey, are you writing? And that's what Lauren used to do for me. Are you writing? And once I started writing, laid out my outline, then I made it happen. But really, the book was written at a pace to become a movie script.
Oh, okay.
Because I've always wanted to be an actor, a movie star.
That's cool.
And they say the first way you make a film is to write it. If you don't
Yeah.
necessarily have money to make and film and produce, then you can at least write a script. So it's written at that pace. I just need to adapt it into a screenplay because I believe some things in my life are very cinematic and dramatic. So that would probably be the next thing, but I just
Yeah.
haven't.
Well, we need to
Haven't
get
done
with
it
the
yet.
After Violence Project because,
Yeah.
that I think they would definitely sign on to something like that. And then nowadays, things are so easy. AI,
Right,
you
right,
don't even have to write anymore. You just talk and it'll
right,
write it for you.
right.
And even like videos too, like things are just so different in
I
such a
know,
fast amount of
I know.
time frame that, it could be simple for you to do it.
Yeah,
Just gotta, but something that I also was thinking about, even because I know I want to write a book myself, and I'll tell you you're gonna laugh, don't laugh.
I won't.
So well, the first name was The Confessions of a Church Girl, but I decided to name it The Confessions of a Call Girl
Okay.
because CALLED, because it kind of maybe get some people what
Yeah.
is she talking about,
Yeah,
but
yeah. It's catchy.
So I understand, especially when you're writing about your own life, it's tough. I remember getting to one chapter and I was like, I was done. And I probably didn't pick it up again for another year or two and still have not completed it. So I get that. But one of the questions here And maybe that could lead to like a second book, right? Is you've testified by for the Texas in front of the Texas legislator and local officials. What are some policies you believe must change to make reentry more humane and effective?
Well, this recently I testified at the Sunset Advisory Commission because they were talking about changing culture. And we believe changing culture starts with language, people first language, person centered language. We can start there at the basic level. Because if we can't get there at the basic level, then and we continue to be seen as other and dehumanized, I don't believe any real policy change will come as long as you're dehumanizing people. Of course, the main thing now is it's escaping me. Not second chances, but it's where they where they seal your record.
Oh, expunction. Oh no, sealing. I thought it was called sealing.
They seal your record, but there's a movement now.
Okay.
And I just can't. It's escaped me at the
We'll
moment.
put it on the bottom. I'll put what the name is.
Yeah. Well, basically, where you're not, like your non-disclosure, that kind of thing.
Right. Right.
So you are seen not just about your background. You can come in as your whole self. However, some kind of disagree with that philosophy that you should accept me for all of who I am. I shouldn't have to hide
Right.
my background on my record. Also, when we think about from the political landscape of this past general election and our current president, well, in the state of Texas, having a felony is a disqualification for running from public office. Well, now that should be out of the water.
Period.
It should no longer be considered a disability.
Right.
Having a criminal background is not a disability.
Right.
And that's the way the former statute, I'll say the current statute is written, that, your conviction is a disability from being able to run for public office.
Right.
But these same legislatures voted for our current president.
Yeah.
Right.
Sky.
So all of that, I'll say to the audience, should be out of the window. There should be no disability or disqualification for any form of employment that you seek to pursue.
Exactly. At all. Because the highest person in the United States
Yes.
is, I don't like to use the word criminal and
Yeah.
that thing, but he has a record.
A person with a conviction.
There you go. A person with a conviction. So, any other initiatives that you're working on that we should know about?
Not at the moment. I mean, I'm really
Enjoying
embracing my retirement
Yes. That's
and
beautiful.
traveling and attending these different conferences.
Yeah.
And it just came to me, clean slate.
Clean
That's-
slate.
that-
That's it.
That's what was flipping. Yeah, clean slate.
Clean slate.
Everybody deserves a clean slate.
Yeah. Clean
Because
slate initiative.
our crimes shouldn't live in perpetuity.
Right.
Because that's what we experience. Like, even though I've completed my sentence, I'm fully free from all forms of, bondage, I still don't have a clean slate. Like, I believe if I were to go apply for a job, I still got to write that on there depending on, where I'm applying. I mean, it doesn't apply with the state with the county and the city, but the state at the state level, still there,
And they say, like, after 7 years, it doesn't matter, but it seems like, folks are still.
Yeah,
Like
because there's no
20
consistency in the policy for look-back periods. There was legislation several sessions ago where we were fighting for look-back periods, standardization of what the look-back period should be.
Right.
Those things haven't passed, even with apartment associations for rental properties. Look-back period. There were bills about what background check source did you use, like third party. You know what I mean? Because even with the state government, I was sharing with someone a few years ago that your criminal history report comes from the DPS
Right.
when you apply for state government jobs. Well, private employers can just pull up some third party and it has all of your arrests, them being laymen don't necessarily understand what they're
Yeah.
reading.
Right.
They don't know the disposition of charges. They just see all of these charges and these arrests, and it makes you look like, you're just some habitual. And it could have been missed. Like, they don't understand. So there needs to be some standardization, I would say, in that and the stuff that shows up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Well, while you're embracing retirement, I'm so glad that you are one call away. If we need you to, use your voice and your experience to help in whatever movement that, aligns with your values. So I guess I have one last question, or two, because I always allow you to
Sure.
say whatever, that's on your heart that you want to say to the people. Um, What can listeners and local communities do today to support reentry?
I would say learn more about it.
Information.
There are organizations that you can get involved with, because we really don't know. We're kind of guessing at it. Like I said, there are expectations of the family for the person that's returning, and the person that's returning has expectations. Give you an example. So I come home from prison. If I don't have my driver's license, then my relative, loved one, partner, or whatever, has to be my Uber and my Lyft. You know what I'm saying? If I don't have access to a computer, and I'm not computer literate, these people have to translate all of these things for me.
Yeah.
So I will say, if you have someone that's incarcerated, write them, ask them, what do they need?
Yeah.
It's not just about money and clothes.
Right.
Ask them, what do they need? What are their challenges? And this is before they come home. Then what you need to do is start Google searching, finding the resources so they can have a soft landing,
Yeah.
and also provide you some help and support in supporting your loved one who's returning,
Facts.
because that is, I think, is the missing piece, is that real handoff to where the person here knows how to receive their returning loved one,
Yeah.
because we often really don't know how to receive.
At all.
Yeah.
And I think that's so true because, like, I'm literally living that experience. I mean, I kind of like alley-ooped it, so it was not planned, was not, I just did not even know that I would be in this situation.
Yeah.
And so to be there walking alongside them in their reentry, like knowing I advocate and I help, but I'm never like side by side. And I'm like, and it's overwhelming for the person that is supporting.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. Do you have any parting words that you want to leave with the people before we let them know how to follow you and all of the things?
Yeah. So one of the things I said on the day of the mural is, there's a man named Sisyphus in Greek mythology who has this burden of carrying this, or pushing this big old boulder, this rock up this hill. And what that struggle represents is our struggle for generations, hundreds of years, that our people have been pushing this rock through the Middle Passage, through the transatlantic slave trade, through the Great Depression of the 1930s, through the Civil Rights Movement of the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, war on drugs, right? We're still here. Now this new administration and the, realigning of ICE and all of these things that are going to impact us, we got to keep pushing that rock. And we got to continue pushing that rock until we abolish all of these systems of oppression. And we may not see it over the hill, but we can't let it crumble down and fall on us. Can't do it.
That's good stuff. Thank you, Darwin. I'm gonna use that for myself.
Yes.
So yeah, y'all can find Darwin on Facebook, on LinkedIn at Darwin Hamilton, IG DHam629. So yeah, and I didn't give y'all all his accolades, so please go Google him, get his book. It's on Amazon. So thank you, Darwin, again for being here. I appreciate you so much.
It was my
This
pleasure.
is a gift. Thank you.
Thank you.
Alrighty, well, I'll see y'all next time. Later.